The year is 480 BCE. The Persian Empire, the undisputed heavyweight champ of the world, decides to launch the ultimate get-back tour against mainland Greece. King Xerxes I amasses an army so ridiculously large it was basically a walking city. His logistics team was having an absolute nightmare organizing this cross-continental road trip. The Persian force was an international supergroup of warriors, a real all-star team. Meanwhile, the Greeks were a collection of rival city-states constantly arguing in the group chat. The Greek plan was simple: use the terrain as a force multiplier. They couldn't win on an open field, so they had to turn the battlefield into a choke point. This is where King Leonidas and his 300 Spartans enter the chat. They weren't just soldiers. They were the most elite, full-time warriors in the ancient world. Power isn't just about numbers. It's about how effectively that power can be applied. A single key can hold shut a door that 1,000 fists cannot break. The Persians, absolutely delulu with confidence, thought this would be a quick win. They sent in wave after wave, expecting the Greeks to just fold. Straight up savage. For 2 days, the narrow pass of Thermopylae became a meat grinder. The Greek phalanx was like an unbreakable wall, a human traffic jam with very sharp points. The Persian immortals, the king's elite troops, were sent in. They were supposed to be the best, but in the pass, they were just more bodies for the pile. This was a classic case of asymmetric warfare. The smaller, more agile force was using the environment to neutralize the advantage of a much larger, less adaptable opponent. Xerxes was getting desperate. His whole invasion timeline was being held up by a few guys in a goat path. This was not on his 5-year plan. A society's strength is often revealed not in its grand monuments, but in the willingness of its people to defend the narrow passes against overwhelming odds. Then came the betrayal. A local resident named Ephialtes showed the Persians a secret path around the pass. This was the ultimate backdoor exploit in ancient warfare. Leonidas, knowing he was surrounded, dismissed most of the Greek army. He and his 300 Spartans, plus some Thespians and Thebans, stayed to fight to the end. Their final stand wasn't for victory, but for time. They were buying precious days for the rest of Greece to prepare its main defense, a tactical loss for a strategic win. The legend of Thermopylae was born, a story of sacrifice so powerful it became a cultural touchstone, echoing through history as the ultimate example of defiant courage. It is a profound truth that a story of heroic defeat can inspire more than 1,000 mundane victories. Martyrdom has its own unique, enduring power. With the land route open, the Persians marched on Athens. The city was evacuated, and the invaders burned it to the ground. A truly big yikes moment for Greece. The Greek resistance was now entirely dependent on its navy, led by the Athenian politician Themistocles. He was a master strategist with some serious main character energy. Themistocles knew he couldn't beat the massive Persian fleet in open water. Like at Thermopylae, he needed to choose the terrain. This time, it would be the sea. Victory often belongs not to the strongest, but to the one who best understands the geometry of the conflict, turning lines and angles into weapons of war. He chose the Straits of Salamis, a narrow channel of water where the larger, less maneuverable Persian ships would get tangled up like a truck in an alleyway. The other Greek commanders were hesitant. Some wanted to retreat. Themistocles had to convince them to stay and fight. The morale was, let's say, not on fleek. So he resorted to some classic trickery. He sent a fake deserter to Xerxes, telling him the Greeks were planning to escape overnight. "This ain't it, chief." Xerxes, blinded by arrogance, totally bought it. He sent his fleet into the straits at night to block the supposed escape, trapping his own ships instead. The greatest weapon against an opponent is often their own ego. A clever leader doesn't break their enemies' walls. They find the key to unlock them from within. At dawn, the trap was sprung. The Greek fleet, smaller but more agile, charged into the disorganized Persian armada. It was chaos. Absolute NPC behavior from the Persians. The Greek triremes were built for this. With bronze rams on their prows, they were essentially floating battering rams, punching holes in the larger Persian vessels. The Persian ships, packed tightly together, couldn't maneuver or effectively use their main advantage: numbers. Their size became a liability. The morale swing was seismic. Xerxes watched the disaster unfold from a throne set up on the shore. Imagine live streaming the biggest fail of your career to your entire empire. No cap. In any complex system, whether a fleet or a company, efficiency is lost when units get in each other's way. Order collapsing into chaos is entropy in action. The battle became a series of individual ship duels rather than a coordinated fleet action. This played directly to the strengths of the Greek crews and marines. The confined geography of the straits was the true commander of the battle, dictating the terms of engagement and stripping the larger force of its primary advantage. This is girl math, but for war. If my 300 ships beat your 1,000 ships by using a narrow strait, I basically saved money on 700 ships. By midday, the Persian fleet was in full retreat. What was left of it anyway? The sea was littered with the wreckage of their grand ambitions. For Xerxes, the dilemma was immense: stay and risk the rest of his army being cut off, or retreat and accept a humiliating defeat. A true command decision. Hubris is the great trap of power. The belief in one's own invincibility is the very weakness an enemy can exploit to bring an empire to its knees. He chose retreat. Xerxes fled back to Persia, leaving a portion of his army behind under his general Mardonius. The Great Invasion had effectively been broken. This was the turning point of the Greco-Persian Wars. The threat was not over, but the myth of Persian invincibility was shattered forever. The vibe had officially shifted. The victory at Salamis secured Greece's future. It allowed Athenian democracy and culture to flourish, laying the groundwork for what would become Western civilization. No pressure. The cost of that future was paid in blood and bronze. Every great leap forward in history is built upon the foundation of immense sacrifice. The battles of 480 BCE show that technology and numbers are not everything. Strategy, morale, and the clever use of terrain can allow the few to defeat the many. This set the stage for the final land battle at Plataea the following year, where the remaining Persian army would be decisively defeated, ending the invasion for good. The Greco-Persian Wars were more than a conflict. They were a clash of ideologies. The centralized monarchical empire versus a decentralized collection of independent city-states. Thermopylae was the heroic sacrifice. Salamis was the strategic masterpiece. Together they formed a 1-2 punch that saved a civilization and shaped the next 2 millennia. This underdog story has been retold for centuries, a historical event that feels like a Hollywood script. But the stakes were real, and the outcome was never guaranteed. All systems, no matter how powerful, have a single point of failure. The challenge is finding that vulnerability before your opponent finds yours, a timeless lesson. The confidence of the Persian Empire was its greatest strength and its ultimate undoing. They just couldn't imagine a world where they didn't get what they wanted. And what of the heroes? Leonidas became a legend. Themistocles, the architect of victory, would later be exiled from Athens. Politics is a brutal game. History is not a clean narrative of good versus evil. It is a messy, complicated story of human ambition, desperation, genius, and folly, often all at once. The legacy of these battles is immense. The idea that a free people, united in purpose, could stand against a tyrant became a cornerstone of Western identity. For Persia, it was a major setback, but not the end. The empire would endure for centuries more, but its westward expansion was permanently halted. A hard boundary was drawn. The turning point was not a single moment, but a psychological shift. The Greeks started to believe they could win, and the Persians started to fear they could lose. An empire's momentum is a powerful force, but it is not infinite. It can be broken against the rocks of geography and the will of a determined people. In the end, the invasion that was meant to crush Greece instead forged its identity. Shared struggle became the glue that temporarily bound the rival city-states together. It was a victory of the particular over the universal, of local identity against imperial ambition, a lesson that would echo from Thermopylae and Salamis through all of history. The stories of these battles remind us that history is not inevitable. It is shaped by choices made in moments of extreme pressure, by courage, and by cunning. A civilization is defined not just by what it builds, but by what it refuses to surrender. That is the enduring legacy of the men who fought in 480 BCE. But victory has a cost. The camera pans over a field of battered shields and broken spears, a silent testament to the violence of the struggle for freedom. Generations would be shaped by these wars. The trauma and the triumph would echo in their politics, their art, and their philosophy for the next 100 years. Freedom is never a final state. It is a constant process, a struggle that each generation must face on its own terms, in its own narrow passes. The war shifted the balance of power, elevating Athens to a position of dominance that would lead to new conflicts, this time among the Greeks themselves. For those who fought, the world was irrevocably changed. They had faced the abyss and held the line, ensuring a future they themselves would never fully see. 2 legendary battles, 1 year of crisis, and the fate of the world hanging in the balance. Thermopylae and Salamis, history's ultimate tale of the underdog.